Today on Inside Utah Politics, making your vote count. Election Day just a few weeks away now, and there are important dates and deadlines you need to know about. The State Director of Elections is here to break it all down. Plus, Governor Gary Herbert rolling out a new strategy for dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. Will it help turn around our rising case count? Our panel will debate.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It's time to go inside Utah politics, and we do begin today with Justin Lee. He's the State Director of Elections, here with some important information on the general election. Justin, glad to have you back on the show. Can't believe it's already time to start talking about this again.
Hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, it's election season. We're here again.
Yeah, it goes by fast. All right, let's start off with some changes this year. Obviously, we're dealing with the pandemic, and these are waters we haven't been in before. The legislature has been addressing this. Talk about the special session and what has been happening to address Election Day.
You know, the good news for us is even though the pandemic is something that is new, voting by mail is not something that's new for us. A lot of other states have been scrambling, trying to increase their vote by mail this year. And for us, this is going to feel a lot like business as usual. Now, the legislature did make a few changes. One, they really want us to promote vote by mail. There will be polling locations available on Election Day and during early voting, but we're really encouraging people to stay away from those locations unless they really need help. They've lost their ballot, they never received a ballot, for example, or they want to vote on the 8A machines. Other than that, it should feel like a very normal election here in Utah.
Okay, any advice on getting it done early? You know, there's been so much national talk and negative attention put on mail-in ballots across the country. Are you encouraging people to get this done early so that it can be processed early as well?
There are a few advantages to getting it done early. One, you know, if you get it done early, you'll be taken off the list of people who have not yet voted, and campaigns will stop reaching out to you. That's kind of a benefit for some people. But also, that helps us get our results done earlier. We'll have more results on election night, and it will help us keep people away from the polls or even dropping it off late. So getting it in early is certainly something we'd recommend this year.
You mentioned there will be some day of options for those that don't get a mail-in ballot, but at this moment, they went out just during the week. At this moment, if you did not get one, is there still a way to get a mail-in ballot instead of having to show up day of?
Absolutely. We still have until this Friday, the 23rd at 5 p.m. to register to vote, and you'll still have a ballot mailed to you. You'll get that ballot a few days later, that last week before the election, but there's time where you can still put it back in the drop box or put that in the mail to mail it. So this Friday, October 23rd, is the deadline to register if you have not yet registered.
So even if you register by the deadline, 5 p.m. this Friday, you can still get a mail-in ballot sent to you?
That's right. They will still mail you that ballot, and you'll get that about 7 days before the election at the latest. So still plenty of time to vote and get that in.
Okay, let's talk about some important deadlines because you have to meet those in order for your ballot to be counted. The postmark deadline, tell us all about that.
That's right. The postmark deadline is very important. If you're going to send your ballot back through the mail, you need to have that ballot postmarked no later than November 2nd, the day before Election Day. Now, one thing that everyone needs to be aware of is different post offices have a different deadline in the day for postmarking. So if you get to November 2nd, that last day, you'll probably want to walk it into the office and make sure they stamp that so it is counted. Of course, if you miss that deadline, you can always put it in the drop box until 8 p.m. on election night. And
there are several drop boxes in Salt Lake County. What about other counties across the state?
We have a lot of drop boxes. We're adding drop boxes every year. We're up to 160 drop boxes this year. A couple of years ago, I think we were closer to 130. So Davis County, for example, they added 16 drop boxes across their county that are available 24 hours a day. And most of them are found outside of libraries, so in very publicly accessible places.
I remember in years past, we've had some trouble where people turned theirs in even on, say, the Saturday before, and this was a rural area, and it wasn't postmarked in time. So even when you start to approach that weekend, you really need to make sure you, one, either get into the post office and watch them do that, or potentially look for these drop box locations. How can people find out where these drop boxes are and where they live?
So if you go to vote.utah.gov and put in your address, it will pull up all the different ways you can vote. It'll have a list of drop boxes in your county, places where you can vote early and in person, and of course for those people that absolutely need to, where to vote on election day. So vote.utah.gov has all the information.
A very interesting change this year. A lot of Utahns have just been able to check one box and avoid filling out all the other races down the ballot. You can't do that this time around. Talk about the elimination of straight party voting.
That's right. This last legislative session, legislature voted to get rid of straight party voting. So you won't have that option at the top of your ballot. And that's good for a few different reasons. One, there were plenty of people who would check that box thinking they had to check that box, or that they had to put their registration, their party affiliation on there. So there was some confusion for voters. We think the benefit will be voters will have to look down through the ballot, look at all of the races and make sure they're not missing anything, and then make calls on individual races as well.
Yeah, we saw the legislature take that up year after year, and then this past year we finally saw that go through, so that will be an important change to be watching for. Okay, we've talked about early voting. Give us the info we need to know about that.
So early voting, in-person early voting, begins this upcoming Tuesday. And different counties have different dates and deadlines for early voting. So again, go to vote.utah.gov. But if someone really does want to vote in person and just can't be convinced to do anything else, we ask you to go do that early. Again, that helps spread people out. We don't want to have crowds at the polling locations, particularly with the pandemic going on right now. So early voting starts this week, and you can go to vote.utah.gov and find out those locations.
And when does early voting end?
So early voting generally ends the Friday before the election, but there is an opportunity for counties if they want to extend that over that final weekend to do that. So we'll see as we get closer if there's additional early voting that takes place in person.
Same-day registration, another option on the table this year, even though things are a little different and you're encouraging vote by mail.
That's right. Election day registration is always an option, and that's true for in-person early voting and also true on election day. Now, because we've got until this Friday, the 23rd, to register to vote, we would encourage everyone to do that. But if you miss that deadline, there is a chance to go to the polls to register and vote. You'll want to make sure you take some identification to show who you are, and then take something like a bank statement or a utility bill to show where your address is.
Now, there was a little incident pop up in Sanpete County. Talk about what happened and how it's being addressed.
That's right. Unfortunately, when ballots hit this past week in Sanpete County, the signature block was left off of the envelopes. So this was an error from the printer, from the vendor, who sent out these envelopes without a place to sign. Now there's still space on the envelope where a voter should sign, but they didn't mark that in any way. So what Sanpete County has done is they sent out postcards this last week to all of the voters, letting them know how to sign, and then also they could sign that postcard if they happen to send in the ballot already. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's one of the benefits of sending ballots out a few weeks early, that we do have a few days, a few weeks to deal with these issues and make sure every vote is counted.
As you're taking a look at what's happening across the country, in Georgia we're seeing people wait in line 5 to 6 hours. Other states just starting mail-in balloting for the first time, and things are arising from that. Talk about what's happening here in the state of Utah and how it compares to what we're seeing on the national level.
You know, it should feel fairly normal for us here in Utah. We hope we don't run into very long lines on election day. And again, let me reiterate, if people get that by mail ballot, we ask them to vote that through the mail or to put it in a drop box to avoid those crowds. But we don't think we'll run into the same hiccups that you're seeing in some other states. There's no question there's a lot of excitement. A lot of people want to vote this year. We expect record-breaking turnout. But we think we can do that here in Utah without long lines or a great deal of inconvenience for anyone. Okay,
Justin, appreciate your time. Very useful information and important this time of year. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. Still to come, a new poll finds Utahns view President Trump more favorably than Senators Mike Lee and Mitt Romney. Our panel weighs in on that a little later. But first, the stakes are high in the race for Utah's 4th congressional district. That's why it's drawing big bucks from across the country. More on the record-breaking spending when we return. Welcome back. There is national interest in a highly competitive congressional race right here in Utah. As ABC4's Nick McGurk tells us, it's a race for Congress expected to shatter spending records for Utah's 4th District.
This is not a time for name-calling and finger-pointing.
Even before tonight's debate between Congressman Ben McAdams and Republican challenger Burgess Owens.
We see some of the most negative ads I've ever seen.
Utahns have seen plenty from the candidates, with an unprecedented advertising blitz on local television.
Ben McAdams, for example, raised $3.4 million total in the last election. He raised that in June already in this election.
Not only have campaigns been raising big money, outside groups have been spending big money too.
But we are seeing an immense amount of money coming into negative campaign ads.
FCC records projecting some $11 million in ad spending on local television alone for this 4th congressional district race.
We're looking at an enormous amount of, you can call it outside money. Some people like to call it satellite funding from places outside the state.
The race isn't over yet, but Perry says projections are this will be a record year for outside ad spending in a district so tight that McAdams won by less than 700 votes in 2018.
It leans Republican, but it has a Democrat representing it.
Both candidates asked about the big money race and about campaign finance reform that would hold candidates responsible for super PACs.
I do support campaign finance reform, and I especially would support limiting the amount of outside money and dark money that can come into a race.
Mr. Owens, same question.
I'm brand new at this whole thing of policies. I mean, as a politician, I'd like to know more what that looks like, and making sure the freedom of speech is all part of that process.
In Salt Lake City, Nick McGurk, ABC4 News.
This election season, ABC4 News is traveling to counties across the state to find out what's driving people to the polls. This week, we're meeting up with voters in Summit County. ABC4's Haley Hendricks sharing what they hope to see in the coming years.
Hundreds of restaurants, art galleries, and shops line historic Park City Main Street. And with outdoor activities and events bringing people from around the world to Summit County's largest city, some local business employees tell us they hope for continued growth in the coming years.
We've been able to maintain the kind of quaint, historic feel of Main Street, which I think is very important going forward, and they seem to be making every effort to keep that going.
We hope for political stability, we hope for open businesses, we hope for healthy people, and keeping the economy going.
Despite COVID-19 shutdowns earlier this year, O.C. Tanner General Manager David McMaster and Meyer Gallery Director Adam Hansen say they're doing better than expected.
Still a lot of people, a lot of traffic, fortunately a lot of sales.
And when it comes to voting for their voice to be heard, they believe it's one of importance.
Voting is a very important civic activity for every American. I think we should all be engaged in that way. We should be up on the issues, and you should know why you're voting as much as you should know that you're voting.
Haley Hendricks reporting for us. Due to COVID-19 concerns, as we heard in the top of the show, Summit County officials, like others, encouraging voters to cast those ballots by mail. If they can't, drive-through location will be available on Election Day in Colville. Still to come, the state is taking a new approach to address the coronavirus pandemic. Our panel will break it down when we return.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the big stories of the week with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Senator Dan McKay and former State Senator Jim DeBackus. Gentlemen, great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
All right, coronavirus strategy. Let's start off with that. The governor rolling out a new one during the week, focusing more on transmission index, COVID-19 transmission index, which really puts the focus on hot spots. Jim, let's start with you. Your thoughts on the new plan.
You know, from day one, this administration has bobbled the whole process. Utah now, according to the New York Times, is number 4th in spread. It's been a constant rise up. The governor hasn't paid attention. The legislature put together a COVID task force. Their first job, make sure every company in the state doesn't have to care about its employees. We saw what happened in Logan as a result of that at the meatpacking plant. then they marched forth with this COVID commission made up of not one Democrat, very few medical people, other than people that were with the hospital association. I'm telling you, it's been mismanaged. It's been a catastrophe from day one. They have no plan other than to keep the whiners in Utah County happy, and in rural Utah, lives are being taken because of the constant, horrendous way that the state, the governor, Mr. Cox, as head of the task force, have completely messed up the COVID crisis.
I did not expect him to say Utah County when he talked about whiners in that conversation. I literally expected his long whine to then be ended with whiners like me, but he didn't go there. Sorry.
Well, that's what he was thinking.
Yeah.
And he usually says what he thinks, so I'm surprised he didn't.
Yeah.
Senator McKay, let's bring you in on this conversation. Some people saying it goes too far, others saying it's not enough. Your thoughts on this new strategy?
Look, what the governor's done is really scientifically backed approach to trying to deal with viral spread, as opposed to trying to attack the wrong animal, which is keeping track of a case number or trying to track other elements. It's really trying to keep track of that transmission rate and increasing visibility on an issue when transmission rates are high. Now, the hard part about this is in the new color code, or in the, I guess, getting rid of the color code system and having the high, moderate, and low transmission rates, the real hard part about that is some of the local control elements and consulting seem to have gone away, and really it's just health departments are going to tell people when and where, and it's going to be based on fixed numbers. Some people are very concerned about that. I'm going to be very interested to see how that plays out over the coming weeks.
Jim, essentially we're seeing more mask mandates go into place, restrictions on gathering. Why is this not a step in the right direction?
Because the fundamental issue is not where the governor is still talking. The priority is with keeping businesses open. The Chamber of Commerce has been calling the shots, and their people all along, when it should be the doctors, the scientists, the medical professionals, and they have been excluded.
No, they've been included. If you look at the CDC guidelines right now, Jim, and you say, look, the CDC is now more concerned about mental health issues than they are necessarily about community spread with the COVID virus.
That's not true.
Which is really, really
that
interesting
not
when you see
true.
research
that
coming
is
out
made up
that
talking
changes
point.
the mental health component.
That is a made-up talking point. People are, scientists are more concerned about thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans dying every month.
You missed 1,000.
Not about the side issues. Yep, we're going to have issues with people's psychology through this, but that's not what the issue is. Let's stop people from dying, and Utah doesn't have that as a high priority.
Jim, we know that leadership is going to require a measured approach to trying to balance all the public policies. You can't only prevent death. If we took that approach, we would shut down the highways, because that's where we have far more fatalities than we should. We would shut down schools. We would shut down all things, just trying to prevent death. And I think really what everybody, and you're hearing this throughout the state, everyone wants to find a managed approach back to normal.
And the way you do that is first to recognize that the virus is in charge. The virus doesn't care that you want schools open. The virus doesn't care. We need, if we're gonna get where New York is, for example, with under 1% testing positive, they have, in 20 million people in New York, fewer cases than we have in Utah. This mentally incapacitating Chamber of Commerce approach, which is, well, the doctors are saying one thing, but really, we at the Chamber, we got to keep business going. The way you keep business going is to deal with a virus,
but
and
Jim,
we're not.
You bring up New York as an example there, and even they had to roll back some of their schools opening and parts of the economy. So how long are you going to let this go?
That's my question. We're going to be here in another year with this Utah plan because there is nothing there to do the three things that are necessary. Massive testing. We're stuck at 7,000 or 8,000 a day. It should be double that. Second, getting that positive rate down. That's a killer. We're at 14, 15%. New York, a lot of the other states are at 1%, and that means the virus is lurking everywhere and we don't know where.
But Jim,
the
we have a
third thing
young
is contact
state,
tracing.
and if you look at the mortality rate among the young, we are seeing that the governor is appropriately managing both. I would not turn this state or its issues over to the Democratic Party at this moment. I got to be honest, the idea of shutting everything down and locking everybody in their houses with some kind of government mandate, it makes me feel very uncomfortable, and I really don't think it's the Utah way. I'll tell you what is the Utah way. Taking a smart, measured approach, trying to balance both, because there's no way this virus is going away in the next 5 weeks.
What about a mask? Is that requiring too much? 43 states, you leave your house, you put a mask on. But Utah, we have refused to do that. The Speaker of the House says, we're leaving this up to an individual mandate, and that's what our whole plan is, the individual mandate. We've ridden that individual mandate down to one of the worst states in the country because we are refusing to accept the responsibility. And why? I think the governor is just afraid of all those fringe people within his party, and he won't face up to the facts.
We've seen mask mandates in Salt Lake County and Utah County in effect right now, and we're still seeing cases go up there, and you can go out and you're seeing people not wearing those masks.
When you have a mask mandate, when that is there, automatically you see masks rise up between 20 and 25%. It's sending the message. On the other hand, when you say, nope, we're not going to have a mask mandate, you are also sending a message, which is, you know what, we're blah, 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 but really masks aren't important. What is the downside of a mask, for heaven's sakes, when requiring one?
Look, I've been in favor for a long time of taking every precaution that an individual can take to prevent the spread of the virus. I think everybody would be there, and honestly, I think it's important that everybody take those appropriate steps for themselves. Trying to create government remedies that then lead to crimes, that then lead to locking people up to try and make a point about a mask, Jim. Look, man, I love you. I just disagree with you on this one.
All right, very strong opinions on both sides of this, definitely. But gentlemen, I want to get to at least one other topic before we run out of time here. A Y2 Analytics favorability poll. President Trump, 52% favorable, 48% unfavorable. Senator Lee, 48 and 40. And then Senator Romney, 45 and 52 unfavorable. What do you make of this favorability poll where Utahns are ranking the president higher than our two senators? Senator McKay, let's start with you on this one.
Honestly, I think these polls most recently reflect the two senators and their approach to the Supreme Court nomination. I think Mitt Romney dragging out as long as he did, saying he was going to wait and try and figure out what the right thing was to do. I think Utah and most of Utah recognizes this is a rare opportunity for the president to have a full 4-year term, and I think these polls represent that differential, and probably that differential on that issue as well. But you also see Mitt Romney taking a lot of controversial positions that can offend even people in the middle, that I think we would prefer to see our senator take a different tact.
Jim, your thoughts on that?
Well,
Surprised at all?
I think it's kind of fun. I mean, they are losing their popularity for opposite reasons, which is ironic. Mike Lee, in one of the most outrageous pronouncements ever by a Utah senator, said, democracy, it isn't all that good, and there's other ways to get things done. I mean, I don't know where this guy's head is.
Jim, that's not what he said, one. But two, we do not live in a democracy, and Senator Lee was very clear about that. We don't live in a democracy.
Okay, so
the Pledge of Allegiance is really quite clear, Jim. I'll recite it for you in case you've forgotten it. But we pledge allegiance.
So why should we even have
to
elections?
The republic for which it stands.
Why do we have? That's not what he was talking about. And so Dan, why do we vote for president?
Why do we vote for president?
Why should Utahns vote individually for president? If that is a state choice that the legislature should make, as a republic would have it be, is that just like a preference, and then the state can decide who they want to?
The Electoral College was set up for a reason, and it's meant to insulate the presidency. And we had a way of insulating the Senate from becoming a democracy as well. We did away with that with the 17th Amendment. All that aside, Jim, don't disperse. Don't try and disparage Senator Lee over
Look,
whether or
just
not we have
look
a
at the
democracy.
tweet
This
yourself.
conversation is just playing itself out. I'm a spectator here on this one, and it's been quite enjoyable, but the time has run out, gentlemen.
Dang it.
Thanks for your time. We'll have to have you back again soon to finish more of this lively conversation. We'll be right back.
I don't think
More
he
in
means
City
that.
Hall Politics. Have a good day. We leave now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. The Utah Debate Commission hosting 2 debates this week. Tomorrow, the candidates in Utah's 2nd Congressional District will go head-to-head. Then on Wednesday, the candidates for Utah Attorney General will take center stage. You can catch both of them live right here on ABC4 at 6 p.m. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me to InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook and engage there. Just log on and search Glenn Mills, ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.